So it is historically accurate to say that we have historically had a dominant two-party system. Okay? Now, why do we call it a two-party system? Well, we don't literally mean that there are only two political parties at any given time. All along this timeline, there are other political parties, and this is just a sampling. This is not a complete list. Okay? If I tried to put too many more up there, it would have gotten so cluttered you wouldn't have been able to make much sense out of it. So I just sampled a few, and notice most of them are very short-lived. Most of them pop up, and then they go away very quickly. Okay? There's a few exceptions to that, but why do we call them minor parties? Why do we set them apart and say, oh, these are minor parties, these are the major parties? What's the basis of distinguishing between these two? Well, not just presidents. If you look at virtually all public offices in the United States, you can look at presidents to be sure, but you can also look, for example, at the United States Congress. Historically, if you look at the United States Congress today, right, what do you see in the United States Congress? You see Democrats and Republicans. But that's not just the current Congress. You can go back historically and, we're now in the 116th Congress, but you can go back, to the 1860s, and you'll see that all you really have in the United States Congress are Democrats and Republicans. Every once in a while, you get an independent candidate elected or a third-party candidate elected, but it's very, very rare. Overwhelmingly Democrats and Republicans. So for those couple of people who said, oh, it's about how many votes they get, more precisely, it's about winning elections. We call these two, these are the two major parties because these are really the only two parties that have any realistic chance of getting candidates elected to office. It's all about winning, right? These parties up here have no realistic chance of getting their candidates elected unless it's just some very extraordinary set of circumstances, which pop up from time to time. Right now in the United States Congress, how many members total are there of the United States Congress? There are two chambers, right? Yes, no? Okay, what the two chambers are? House of Representatives and the Senate. Okay, we'll just abbreviate. Okay, how many members are there of the United States House of Representatives? 435 and 100 members of the Senate, so 535 total. Of those 535 total, somebody take a guess. How many of those 535 are neither Democrats nor Republicans? 2. Very close. Very good. Okay. As far as I think it's 2. Where did you get the number 2? Was that just a wild guess? Okay, yeah, I think the number's 2, actually. And they're both in the United States Senate. One is Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, okay, who was elected as an independent, okay, but as most of you know, is running for the Democratic Party's nomination for president in 2020, also ran for the Democratic Party's nomination in 2016, and he caucuses with the Democrats, so he is functionally a Democrat. And the other is Maine Senator Angus King, just his neighbor a little bit to the north, right? He was also an independent, but caucuses with the Democrats, okay? So effectively, functionally a Democrat as well, okay? But everybody else is either a Democrat or Republican, and that's been repeated for many, many, many Congresses going back. So yes, you can look at the presidency, but you can also look at Congress, and you can also look at state governors around the country, either Democrats or Republicans. You can look at state legislatures like we have over in Austin, Democrats or Republicans. All the other 49 states, they're all either Democrats or Republicans. You can look at county offices, etc., here in Texas and elsewhere around the country. They're all pretty much Democrats or Republicans, right? So that's why we say that this is a dominant two-party system, because these other parties don't really have any realistic shot. Okay, to get back to the original point then, what I'm saying is that historically the argument is, this history argument, is that the reason that we have a dominant two-party system in the United States is because we have historically had a dominant two-party system in the United States. And I'm going to tell you that as explanations go, that's pretty weak. In fact, it's not an explanation at all. The existence of a historical pattern doesn't explain the existence of a historical pattern. misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not trying to tell you that it's not important to understand historical patterns. Don't anybody go tell Professor Grubb or one of my colleagues in the history department that Fagin said that history is meaningless. I'm not saying that. I think it's important to study history and to know history, historical patterns. But here's how ridiculous this is. Okay, this argument. Tell me if you find this to be a satisfying explanation. If somebody asked me, hey Fagin, why do gasoline prices usually go up in the summer? And I said to you, because historically they've always gone up in the summer. You would go, what? That doesn't explain anything. But as a structured argument, that's exactly the same thing, right? The existence of a historical pattern doesn't explain the historical pattern. You would probably want to know, okay, but why has it been the case historically that gasoline prices have gone up in the summer? You can ask your economics professor about that, okay? Maybe that's not as good of an comparison as I think it is. It would not be satisfactory to me if my economics professor said, well, because it always happens. So, here's a second explanation that has been offered by some. The reason that we have a dominant two-party system in the United States is that there's a natural dualism in American politics. This argument is essentially saying that if you think about the big issues that we've confronted as a society, again, over our 200-plus years of history, most of these big issues have come down to an either-or proposition. Either you are for stronger central government or you're for states. Right, you're more in tune with this confederacy arrangement. That was the dispute between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists from the very beginning, right? So you had two parties, the Federalist Party and the Jeffersonian Republicans, to sort of defend those positions, articulate those positions, right? During the Civil War era, one's either an abolitionist or for prolonging or sustaining the institution of slavery, right? During the Gilded Age, one is either for laissez-faire economics or for government regulation. During the Great Depression, one is either in favor of establishing a welfare state or opposed to the establishment of a welfare state. And more recently, as social issues have emerged, a person is either for gun control or for gun rights. A person is either against the death penalty or supports the death penalty. A person is either in favor of equality regardless of sexual orientation or against it, right? That's the argument that these analysts are making. Think about these big issues that you confront. They seem to come down to, naturally then, you would have, if there's a natural dualism to politics, then you would have two political parties to represent those two positions. Well, I'm going to suggest to you that this explanation, it's an explanation, but it's really barely better than the first one. For two reasons. First of all, it's really not true that the Democratic Party represents one position on these issues and the Republican Party represents the other position on these issues. Where the position of the Democratic Party and the position of the Republican Party are not opposed to one another. In fact, you might be surprised by how often the position of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are aligned. But more importantly, it's fairly ridiculous to think that there's something about American politics that's more dualistic than politics in other systems. If what we're saying is that we have a two-party system in the United States because of a natural dualism, if you look at other countries that have competitive multi-party systems, that must mean that their politics is not dualistic. Right? I don't think there's anything about politics in the United States that would suggest dualism, whereas in European countries or in Asian countries or in Australia or New Zealand or any of these other democratic countries around the world where they would have multiple positions on issues. In fact, in American politics, there are all kinds of positions in between these extremes that we talk about. One is pro-choice or pro-life. There's all kinds of positions on the abortion issue in between those two extremes, right? Or on any of the issues that we might talk about. So, I'm going to tell you that that's really just barely better than the first one. Not a very good explanation.